thing to know here is that your hormones are going through a lot of changes.
Bryan Johnson's Blueprint Longevity Protocol is not a one-size-fits-all. Women's biology is very different from men's biology. I'm Dr. Jen, a longevity and physician, and also I focus on perimenopause health. So I wanted to dive into Bryan Johnson's recent video that was done for Longevity Guide for Women. And in this video, while there are a lot of good points I think that have been made, I'm going to focus specifically on the perimenopause portion of the protocol that was discussed and what was missed. So if you're interested in longevity and perimenopause and you want to know more, stick around for this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe my channel. I provide good guidance and health education on perimenopause and menopause and longevity. Okay, so yes, don't get me wrong. Bryan Johnson has spent tons of money and tons of time and has lots of good data and lots of good data-driven science behind what he's doing. He does biomarkers. He's probably one of the most studied men as far as science and even doing protocols that aren't even out available for commercial yet. But his protocol is not addressing specifically women, especially women in midlife, where there are a ton of metabolic shifts that happen and changes. And in order to change that protocol to be specific for women, you have to understand what happens. So there are key differences in men and women. First of all, we not only have a daily rhythm, an infraradian rhythm, but we also have a monthly rhythm, right? So we have these 24-hour clock cycles, but we also have 28, 30-day clock cycles as well. So it's not the same thing when we talk about men and women's biology. In fact, in the different phases of the menstrual cycle, there are different energy demands, performance demands, nutrients that are involved that help optimize. In fact, the other hormones that play nicely or not nicely in the sandbox really are dependent on what is happening in each week of the cycle. For example, in the follicular phase, as estrogen is climbing, then oftentimes you have more energy, you have more insulin sensitivity, your performance can be a little harder when we're talking about gym exercises. Things can change versus right before your period in the late luteal phase, where it should be more focused on restorative. You also become more insulin resistant, so sugar and cravings become a problem. So there are key differences in a woman's biology. And so you can't make a protocol that's day-to-day exactly the same because women are not the same day-to-day. Number two, as we go through menopause, these decline in estrogen causes so many ramifications in our body. So we lose muscle mass. In the first several years of perimenopause, it drastically goes down. Bone mass also goes down, and you lose estrogen to the brain. This is why brilliant women like Dr. Lisa Monscani have recognized the fact that menopause actually accelerates that chance of developing dementia and Alzheimer's long term because we lose that valuable protective hormone estrogen in our brain. Also, women have higher risks for cardiovascular disease than men. And we have different symptoms. In fact, cardiovascular disease is still the number one killer in women. So we have to focus specifically on understanding symptoms and how to focus on prevention of heart disease long term. So women are not the same as men. So you cannot have a longevity protocol that's specifically geared towards every day being the same if you're talking about a woman. So I'm going to play this little clip here where you can see their protocol specifically for perimenopause. And I'm going to break this down to what I think is correct and not correct.
Okay, so let's talk about perimenopause, which is the transition between premenopause and postmenopause, essentially the time near menopause. And so the thing to know here is that your hormones are going through a lot of changes. So what you want to do is make sure you have good baseline before you head into this time period. You can do things like DEXA scans, checking your cholesterol and your blood pressure. I would also encourage you to get a wearable so that you know what your baseline sleep quality is like.
So the two things that I love that she said in this section, first of all, that section is only a minute long when the whole video had 8 minutes and most of it was with premenopausal women. So, with a grain of salt because it really was limited in the perimenopause section. But in the perimenopause section, what I loved is the mention of DEXA scan. So we lose bone mass, especially in the first 5 years of perimenopause. It's a drastic decline. And so we have to make sure that we're focusing on bone. And I am a strong proponent of getting a DEXA scan in your 40s. Guidelines say not to do it until 65. Why would you wait till the cat's out of the bag? Why would you wait till you already have 20 years of changes due to lack of estrogen to find out if your bones are brittle or at higher risk of fracture? Scarily enough, I mean, 25% of women break a hip and die within a year. That is crazy. So we can't wait until we're in our 60s to see if we have osteopenia or osteoporosis. We need to focus on bone health in our 40s. In fact, I even think it's great in your 30s to continue to build bone and to work on things that are specifically for bone. So a DEXA scan also has the advantage of giving you your body composition. So how much sub-Q fat do you have? How much visceral fat? Visceral fat is the type of fat that makes you at risk for heart disease, diabetes, cancer, these long-term problems. It also tells you your skeletal muscle mass. So you want to understand your body composition so that you can then keep on track and prevent that muscle and bone loss as you age. So love that part of her video. Second, she hits a little bit on she said cholesterol panel for perimenopause. So I mentioned heart disease is the number one risk factor for women, number one killer of women in the United States. So we have to focus on prevention for heart health. You have to think about that lens of what can you do in your 30s, 40s, 50s to not end up with heart disease in your 60s. So I am a big advocate of getting not just a cholesterol panel that was mentioned in there, but your cholesterol panel needs to have ApoB and LPA. So when you use Quest, it's called the Cardio IQ. So it has not just a cholesterol panel, but also includes ApoB and LPA. There's been some data, even the 2020 American Association of Cardiology literature, that states that those are the best indicator of cardiovascular disease in women. So if you're not getting those tests done by your doctor, you are missing out. You need to have those tests done. So again, a full lipid panel that includes ApoB and LPA. Thirdly, what she did not talk about was brain health. And honestly, if you talk to any perimenopausal woman, they'll say that's one of the things that bothers them the most. Why are they getting brain fog? Why is it hard to remember things? Little simple words that are like at the tip of your tongue and you just can't get to. So brain health exquisitely is important to protect in perimenopause and in menopause. You want to preserve cognition. Understanding if you're at risk for Alzheimer's dementia, you can do that through genetics, looking for the ApoE4 gene. But if not, you particularly want to focus on how can you fix brain health. One of the best things is exercise. Exercise improves BDNF. Exercise is good for your mood. Exercise is food for your brain. The other thing is doing things that improve neuroplasticity, like brain games. Those are incredibly important to continue to make your brain flexible and overall help long-term for dementia risk. And then there are some smart supplements that are also for improving brain health. Magnesium has been shown to improve cognition long-term, also decrease risk of dementia. So you want to make sure you have a plan that includes brain health as well. And that is what's missing on that longevity protocol. Nothing was mentioned about brain health specifically. And you can also do things like increase omega-3s in your diet, good phytonutrients that are food for the brain, and get your brain tested with an EEG. Totally available in most clinics outpatient. You could actually get testing to understand, is there a missing link or not? So in general, I think the longevity protocol, if we're focusing on perimenopause, like in that video, it needs to include markers, biomarkers for brain, bone, muscle, insulin resistance, or metabolic syndrome. It needs to include more comprehension on how to prevent long-term disease on women in perimenopause, because they are in this middle of this hormonal roller coaster where things need to be optimized. And I didn't even mention hormones, and I think hormonal support should be a must in this time of life, which was not mentioned on that video, but I think that's really critical. And I have lots of good videos on hormone replacement therapy or supporting hormonal health in my YouTube channel. And here's one of them, Doctor's Guide to Hormone Replacement Therapy. So hopefully you liked this review of the Blueprint Longevity Protocol with Bryan Johnson. Remember, this is still an evolving science. We still are learning so much more about what makes women live longer, have a better health span, not just a lifespan. So nothing sort of set in stone, but still trying to push that envelope and understand more how we can make women healthy in the future. If you want to hear more information about longevity videos or just want to know more about how to stay healthy in the future, I'm happy to make them. Give me some ideas down below.